911 operators of Reddit. What is the pettiest reason someone has called 911? Woman called because her pregnant 14 or 15-year-old granddaughter who lived with her and whose bed was the couch, wouldn't get off the couch so she could use it to watch TV. The woman felt very indignant when I asked, "What exactly do you want the police to do?" Officer cleared the call with, "She's got nowhere else to go. Grandma said it's okay for her to stay." Also, lots of ambulance calls for, "I have a stomachache," which was code for, "I need a free pregnancy test." I received a call on the non-emergency line from a 90-something-year-old lady asking me what lamp she should put in her bedroom. I told her I did not understand and that the sheriff's office was not the correct place to ask. Eventually she got upset and said, "Fine, I'll call 911. They'll help me there." I tried to tell her that 911 would just go back to me and it was a misuse of an emergency line, but it was too late. 15 seconds later 911 rings. I answer and lo and behold it was the lady asking, "What lamp should I get for my bedroom?" Not me, but a close family friend worked taking 911 calls for years. She said the number of calls they get about how to cook turkeys at Thanksgiving time is just baffling. There's too many. I once got a call from a family of frequent flyers. A husband's wife ordered the wrong topping on a pizza, so they got in an argument and then she threw a ham sandwich at his head. Another time a call came from a woman who just got out of church and the drive-through to KFC was too long, and she wanted an officer to come out and help. Woman facepalming, light skin tone, fun times. Not an operator, but a female customer once called the cops on my coworkers for scaring her too much. We work at a haunted house. I'm not a 911 operator, but here we go. When I was in college, 90% of my professors were retired or still serving police officers. I was studying police foundations. One of the instructors was telling us about an older lady whose husband had recently passed away. She was dialing 911 every day because she was lonely and wanted a police officer to come and keep her company. They had tried explaining to her that 911 was for emergencies only, but she couldn't help it. To her, she was alone and wanted to have someone with her, so it seemed like an emergency. Eventually my professor was the one to respond to the call. So he went to her house and sat with her. She made tea and put out some cookies and they sat and talked until he had a call. In his eyes it was public service, so he made a deal with her. If she agreed to stop calling for this reason, once every rotation of shifts, approximately once a week, he would go to her house and have tea and cookies. She never called 911 again for that reason, and every week he'd stop by and have tea and cookies until she passed away a few years later. He finished the story saying something like this: "We should never forget that although law enforcement is a big part of our job, public service comes in many forms." I once had the cops called on me by my neighbor. There was a car parked on the street by his backyard, not blocking his parking space in front of his house, not on his property, not inconveniencing him in any way. It was not my car or that of anybody I knew. Same neighbor called the cops on me for animal abuse. My dog was in my fenced-in backyard with a bowl of food and a bucket of water in the shade. Told the cops I chained him up all day and night with no food. I showed the cops the pup and was just like, why would I chain up a dog in a fenced-in yard? Same neighbor called the cops on me for verbal assault when he knocked on my door and said it was against the law to leave my trash can by the road a day after pickup, and I told him to fuck off and closed the door. The weird thing is I never did anything to the guy to get him to start this, and from what I asked the other neighbors he didn't do that to them. Obligatory, not a 911 operator. 8 or 9 years ago, my husband and I had a couple of acquaintances over for dinner one night. They were from our local poker group. The four of us were having a great time when one of the guys accidentally knocked over the other guy's phone and cracked its screen. The second guy went mental. He started yelling at the first guy and demanded that he pay to repair the screen. The second guy agreed to it, but the first guy kept yelling and yelling. He called 911 and the cops came. He told the cops that the second guy broke his phone and he wanted to file a police report. He asked the cops to force the second guy to give him money to repair his phone. The cops were so confused and annoyed. We were mortified because it happened at our house and the cops knew our landlord. We never invited him to our house again. Not on operator, but once someone called cops on me for leaving an unattended bag in the park by our house. Thing was, it was in a town of less than 1,000 people. Tiny park. I was there the whole time. I set it on the table while I played with my young kids. The entire park is visible from any direction. I was never more than 100 feet from my son's diaper bag and the cops came and seemed really confused when they saw me and asked if it was my bag. I was, like, yeah? Then they told me why they came and I was floored. They were annoyed with whoever called and left without further questioning. Plenty of old people call 911 because they just can't rationalize who else to call when something happens like a power outage. But they're usually very nice and don't seem to understand that 911 isn't the place. That said, had a guy call 911 because he lived in a gated community, and the gate was stuck open. Like, it wouldn't close. Nobody was trapped or anything. And he said, and I quote, "Well, I don't have a number for emergency maintenance, so I figured you guys would know somebody." Question mark 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 question mark. In general, we also get a lot of calls of suspicious people. That's just guy sitting in his truck for a little too long. Always really pisses me off to talk to the nosy ass people who are so paranoid of everyone that they waste my time telling me the black dude just doesn't look like he belongs here. A woman called 911 right as she drove into the county I worked for. She was screaming about how the Burger King employees need to be arrested because they threw a milkshake at her. I asked clarifying questions, then asked her if she's sure it was in our county, because we don't have a Burger King in that area, but the neighboring county does. She called me an idiot and to just send the police. Come to find out, she ordered her food but then didn't want it because she didn't know there were a bunch of ers working there. The manager threw her milkshake through her car window. Another one. A very pregnant lady called 911 because the restaurant she ordered from got her order wrong and wouldn't refund her. She sobbed to me about how she's pregnant and she just wanted this certain dish. She threw the order of food at the worker, who placed his own 911 call for assault. That probably didn't work out in her favor. My coworker answered a call asking how badly the bridge was backed up as they had diarrhea. Yeah, I'm in England. We had a call. I worked for the ambulance service, asking where the best place to get a bacon sandwich was at 4 in the morning. When I was 5, I called 911 because my mom threw away some leftover McDonald's fries I had saved from the day before. When I was 4, I called 911 because my mom threw away some old toys of mine. Damn cops didn't arrest her either time, rolling on the floor laughing. People in major cities have been known to call 911 during blackouts because they've never seen the Milky Way before and I guess think it's some toxic cloud or something. Fireman here. Last week I listened to a dispatcher send EMS and police to a house because the man couldn't get a hold of his doctor by phone. At 9 p.m. on a Sunday, the first officer on scene cleared the call in seconds, said he left a message on the doctor's phone and the guy was happy again. In the city where I live, if there's an Amber Alert beeping on your phone at 3 a.m., people will call 911 to bitch about it to the operators saying that it woke them up. I felt really annoyed when I had to call the fire department once, but it ended up being justified. So, if this doesn't fit, well, sorry. But it's what I felt was a petty call. So here it is, story time. It was a weekend, and this happened probably at the beginning of this year, or sometime last. I was awake about midnight or a bit after when a fire alarm goes off in my building. For context, this is a 2-story building in hallway fashion with apartments on both floors running from A, L. So when an alarm goes off, everyone can hear it, even when it's inside someone else's unit. So, one of these alarms goes off, and I write it off as someone burning something they were cooking and would be turned off soon. And I kept playing video games. If you're curious, I was playing Stellaris. So half hour goes by, it's about 1 a.m. now, and the alarm is still going off. I poke my head out the door and I don't know where it's coming from due to the echo effect in the hallway. I write it off again and now I'm freaking out a bit. So I keep poking my head out again and eventually step out into the hallway. I was the only one investigating for some reason. After looking around a bit, realized the alarm that was turned on was the one in the unit across from mine, which had been empty for a month now. Which struck me odd because, well, nothing should be turned on. I figured it was some sort of cable that was melting or something, so I called emergency maintenance and explained the situation. They tried to reach their main employee and didn't succeed, so I called the fire department. They asked me if I smelled smoke after I explained it again, but I couldn't see smoke, or smell anything other than something similar to burning plastic. But I said smoke because I didn't realize what I smelled until after I hung up. So, as soon as I leave with my pets in their carriers, and stand outside, all the fire trucks come in. And I mean, all the trucks, and I felt so bad, because deep inside me I knew it was something that needed just one truck to come over, but I also understood it was better safe than sorry. So after they break in through a window, and everyone but one truck leaves, they tell me the reason the alarm was going off was because maintenance left the stove on and it overheated. By the time they tell me, it's 2 a.m., and I felt like I did a 911 call to the fire department for a fucking stove that was overheating due to maintenance negligence. I probably freaked the whole fire department out that day too. I was a paramedic. Worse was the woman calling for us to transport her with the flu. Her reason: since she's on Medicare, it costs nothing to call an ambulance but about $10 for a taxi. In the middle of transport, had a little girl stop breathing right next to our station. Took the next closest unit about 10 minutes to get there when it would have taken us less than a minute. Yeah, I didn't last long in that field. 911. What is your emergency? Yeah. This bitch is gonna call and say I hit her. But she's lying, I didn't do nothing. Okay, sir. Can I have your name and location so we know who she's lying about when she calls? Click. At the beginning of COVID, people would call 911 to rat out their Chinese neighbors, Canadian-born, only because the pandemic started there. If you want an opposite story kind of, once I called the police non-emergency line because I heard gunshots outside of my, very Canadian, very suburban, house. The officer took my report and then said, well, should this ever happen again, I'd like to encourage you to call 911 and not the reporting desk. My husband and I also spent 15 plus minutes debating if we should call or not, and the officer had questions about that too. I got the police called on me for sitting on the curb at 9:30 p.m. talking on the phone. There was a concerned neighbor somewhere, just making sure I was okay. A classmate of mine in 6th grade called 911 because he lost to his sister in Hungry Hungry Hippos. Not an operator, but my neighbor once threatened to call the cops on me for parking in my own driveway because I was preventing her from blocking it. Edit clarity. She wasn't blocking my driveway from the street. She was parking in my actual driveway. I take calls all the time where people can't find their CAD and want someone to drive them around the parking lot to find it. I work for small police station but once had 911 put through a caller who then requested that I patch them through to a pizza place so they could order pizza from a 911 only cell phone. A friend of mine is a police officer and once told me they've had people call 999 over whose turn it is on the PlayStation. I was calling a friend whose number started by 901. Misdialed. Hung up immediately before call was pick up. 20 feet later cop showed up at the door, asking to come in. My weed pipe was on the floor but he left without giving me any problems. Let's see. A person in a suburban neighborhood called to report a group of youths on bikes, skateboards, etc. Said they were up to no good. When asked what they were doing that constituted a crime or was dangerous, the caller admitted that they hadn't seen anything as such. But they just knew that these kids were up to no good. Didn't even dispatch anyone for that. During a very busy few minutes, some idiot with a scanner decided to call 911 and tell me that one of the local EMS agency's radio channel had an open mic. Basically, that refers to when a radio is accidentally activated and transmitting, potentially picking up any sounds, conversation nearby, usually for an extended period of time. Since we did 911 call taking and dispatch, I was actively listening to said radio channel as this person called. There was no open mic. On a fairly regular basis, people would call 911 because someone wouldn't return property that they had lent. This is 100% not a police issue. As soon as I learned that the property was given, loaned willingly, it makes it a civil, i.e. non-criminal, non-police, issue. On the other hand, this one initially seemed petty but actually wasn't. A guy called and I had a difficult time understanding exactly what he was saying. He was definitely talking about something coming out of his toilet, so I thought he was calling about a plumbing issue. Unfortunately, this is not unheard of, though it is certainly not a good reason to call 911. After listening a bit more, however, I realized that he was reporting demons coming out of his toilet. He was genuinely and very distressed by this, and I didn't suspect that it was a joke or prank. Unfortunately, there was no one I could send right away, so I decided to try to help. I told him to put the toilet lid down. He took my advice, and what would you know? The demons stopped coming out. He was very appreciative. We still sent someone once they were available, only a few minutes later. Not a dispatcher, but when I was in EMS we were dispatched to a psych call. When we got there, this lady was standing outside her house ready to go to the hospital. On the way to the hospital I was talking to her and trying to get her vitals when she told me there was nothing wrong with her, that she heard a family member was in the hospital and needed a ride, so she called 911. Cops met us at the hospital for her. People who get cut off in traffic are probably the worst inane callers. Like, "Oh, so this happened 3 hours ago. You don't remember the road it happened on. You don't know the registration of the VOI. There was no traffic crash, and there is not even the insinuation that either party involved were under influence of substances." Noise complaints are similar. People calling the emergency line to complain about being arrested earlier. One once complaining about being charged for abusing the emergency line. I've had a woman call emergency because their sister was refusing to share their food at a cinema. But what is probably more insane is the serious incidents that are started by inane and petty things. Once had a serious FDV between a mother and daughter. The mother stabbed the daughter after an argument over the color of cupcake batter. In Australia we owe for emergency services, but because too many people watch American television, the 911 number automatically redirects to 000. The number for Domino's Pizza. I told him he wanted 411. Directory assistance in the US, not 911. 911 was for emergencies only. I had a guy call 911 just because he wanted to see fire trucks and ambulances with lights and sirens. He miscalculated. There was a cop too. And he was not amused. Dude spent the night in jail. Thanks for watching. See you later.